Here's something that might mess with your head a little. Your brain right now, while you're watching this, is physically changing. Not in some motivational poster kind of way. I mean literally, actual connections between neurons are being strengthened or quietly pruned away. And the wild part? You have way more say in how that process unfolds than most people ever realize. Today we're getting into the science of how to actually optimize your brain for sharper focus, faster learning, and real, sustainable creativity. And I'm not talking about life hack fluff. I'm talking about the underlying biology, the specific mechanisms your nervous system uses to wire and rewire itself, and how you can align your daily routine with those mechanisms instead of fighting them. Let's start by clearing up one of the biggest misconceptions floating around in the self-improvement world. People hear the word neuroplasticity and they treat it like it's the goal. Like if you can just unlock enough neuroplasticity, you win. But here's the thing. Plasticity just means your brain has the capacity to change. That's it. Change in what direction? Toward what? That part is on you. If I told you, hey, I unlocked a ton of plasticity today, that would mean absolutely nothing without knowing what that change is aimed at. Think of it like this. Saying, I triggered plasticity is like saying, I used my car. Cool, where did you go? The car is just the vehicle. The destination is what matters. So the real question you should be asking yourself isn't, how do I get more neuroplasticity? It's, what specific change do I want to make, and how do I direct my nervous system toward that target? Maybe you want to speak another language. Maybe you want to rewire how you respond to stress. Maybe you want to get better at a skill, or think more creatively, or just feel less scattered. Those are the actual goals. Plasticity is just the mechanism. And here's something that probably doesn't get said enough. Not everyone needs to be in constant transformation mode. Some people are genuinely content where they are, and that is absolutely fine. This conversation is for people who feel pulled toward growth, who want to shift something in themselves intentionally. And the good news is, neuroscience says it's possible at literally any stage of life. Research published in 2025 confirmed that neuroplasticity continues across the entire human lifespan. It's not some gift reserved for children. The window never fully closes. Now, to actually direct your brain's ability to change, you need to understand the system that governs when change is possible and when it isn't. Everything rides on your level of arousal, how alert or calm your nervous system is at any given moment. This is the foundation. The basic structure looks like this. Learning and plasticity get triggered during states of high focus and alertness, but the actual rewiring, the deep consolidation of what you just tried to learn, happens during rest and sleep. You trigger the change while awake. The change gets installed while you rest. That's why sleep quality isn't optional if you care about learning. And it's also why what you do during the day, specifically how you manage your arousal levels hour by hour, matters enormously. So let me walk you through how I think about a day through this lens. Morning is fascinating. Most people, myself included, don't leap out of bed feeling superhuman. And there's actually a reason for that. Your body temperature is at its lowest point right before waking. Cortisol, which is a completely healthy, natural wakefulness signal, starts to surge when morning light hits your eyes, triggering your adrenal glands to release that energy. So viewing natural light within the first 30 to 45 minutes of waking is genuinely one of the most powerful and free things you can do to calibrate your circadian system. The connection between your light-detecting eye cells and your internal clock is itself plastic. It strengthens with consistent morning light exposure. You are literally training your brain to wake up better over time. One thing I've experimented with and found surprisingly impactful is delaying caffeine for roughly 2 hours after waking. I know, I hear you groaning. But here's the mechanism. Adenosine is the molecule that makes you feel sleepy. It accumulates while you're awake and clears during sleep. When you wake up, there's still residual adenosine being cleared naturally. If you flood that system with caffeine immediately, you essentially jam the natural clearing process and set yourself up for a mid-morning energy crash, that familiar wall many people hit around 10 or 11 a.m. Letting your body clear that adenosine first, then adding caffeine on top, gives you a much cleaner, longer lift. Try it for a week. The first couple of days are rough. I won't sugarcoat it. But the shift in how your mornings feel is noticeable. Hydration also matters more than most people acknowledge. Even mild dehydration, not dramatic thirst, just slightly underhydrated, has been shown to impair cognitive function, increase headache frequency, and tank your ability to concentrate. Start your morning with water. If you drink a lot of caffeine, consider adding a small amount of sea salt to your water. Caffeine causes sodium excretion, and low sodium can masquerade as low blood sugar, shakiness, difficulty focusing, brain fog. This one small adjustment quietly eliminates a lot of that. Now, when should you actually sit down and do your hardest mental work? Here's a framework that I find genuinely useful. High alertness states, when you're most energized and focused, are ideal for linear, analytical, strategy-driven work. The kind of thinking where you need to hold a lot in your head at once, stay organized, suppress distractions, and push toward a clear goal. For most people, this window tends to fall somewhere in the 2 to 4 hours after waking, assuming you've done the light exposure and given caffeine time to actually work. There's a fascinating circuit in your brain that governs this called the go/no-go pathway, anchored in a structure called the basal ganglia. When you're in that sweet spot zone of alertness, not too wired, not too sluggish, both pathways are working well simultaneously. You have the drive to pursue the task and the ability to suppress the urge to check your phone every 90 seconds. Both matter. Most people optimize for one and completely ignore the other, and this is why the background music question actually has a scientific answer. If you're very alert, maybe you had strong coffee or got an unusually great night of sleep. Silence is your friend. Your go pathway is already firing hard. Adding stimulation will just increase distraction. But if you're on the lower end of arousal, a little background noise or ambient sound can actually lift your alertness just enough to improve focus. The optimal setting is always a function of where you currently are on that arousal spectrum, not some fixed rule about productivity. Now the afternoon. Most people hit a natural dip somewhere between 1 and 3 p.m. Instead of fighting it with more caffeine or pushing into work that demands sharp linear thinking, there's something dramatically more effective. It's called non-sleep deep rest, or NSDR. Think of it as a structured rest protocol, not a nap, not traditional meditation exactly, but a guided practice that shifts your nervous system into deep recovery without fully losing consciousness. It draws from an ancient practice called Yoga Nidra, and the research behind it has been building steadily. A 2024 study published in Applied Psychology found significant improvements in cognitive reaction time and readiness following even a 10-minute NSDR session. The mechanism involves activating the parasympathetic nervous system, reducing cortisol, and restoring dopamine levels, all without the post-nap grogginess that comes from actual sleep. I do a 20 to 30-minute NSDR session in the early to mid-afternoon. What I notice consistently is that I come out of it in that clearer, slightly spacious mental state that most people associate with early morning, except it's the middle of the afternoon. That second wind is real, and it's biological, not imaginary. And here's something interesting about that particular mental state: being calm, but not fully sharp, slightly relaxed, but still alert. That is actually the optimal state for the first stage of creativity. Creativity is a two-part process. Stage 1 is generative, making loose, novel connections, letting ideas bump into each other in unusual ways, not forcing a specific outcome. Stage 2 is implementation, taking one of those raw ideas and executing it with precision and rigor. Here's what the neuroscience tells us. Those two stages require completely different brain states. Stage 1 flourishes in relaxed, slightly drowsy conditions. Stage 2 demands the same sharp focus as analytical work. This is why creative ideas so often show up in the shower, on a walk, or right before you fall asleep. Your brain is in a lower arousal state, and those looser, more lateral connections emerge. But the shower idea alone doesn't build anything. You still need focused execution to turn it into something real. Some people reach for various substances to access creative states, and I get why. The logic seems to make sense on the surface. But here's the problem. The things that help with loose generative thinking generally undermine the precise implementation phase. You end up with a lot of interesting half-formed ideas and no real output. The far more powerful approach is learning to move fluidly between these two brain states intentionally, using your schedule, your rest, your food timing, your arousal management. Speaking of which, what you eat and when absolutely shapes your mental state. Fasted conditions and low carbohydrate intake tend to support alertness. Large meals and carbohydrate-rich foods shift the body toward calm and eventually sleep, because carbohydrates trigger tryptophan release, which is a direct precursor to serotonin and melatonin. This is actually useful information. It means carb-heavier meals in the evening can support better sleep. And keeping those types of foods minimal during your peak learning hours keeps your brain sharp when you need it. There's one more thing I want to flag for the evening, and most people have never heard this explained. Researchers at Harvard have found that the peak wakefulness signal from the brain's circadian clock actually fires late in the evening, roughly an hour before your typical sleep time. This is why so many people get a second wind right when they should be winding down. It's not insomnia, it's not anxiety. It's a hardwired survival signal that historically prompted early humans to do a final check of their environment before vulnerability during sleep. Understanding that this is normal and will pass within 45 to 60 minutes takes away a huge amount of unnecessary stress around it. You can use that window for low-effort tasks, tidying up, laying out things for tomorrow, and simply let it pass without reading too much into it. And this is really the through line of everything we talked about today. Your biology has a logic to it. There are windows in your day when you're designed to be sharp, windows when you're designed to rest, windows when creativity flows, and windows when execution is possible. Most of us are constantly fighting our own biology instead of working with it. You can't think your way out of a circadian rhythm, but you can absolutely design your day around it. You don't need a massive overhaul. 1 or 2 intentional 90-minute focus sessions anchored to your natural alertness peaks will do more for your learning and performance than grinding through 8 distracted hours. Add a rest protocol in the afternoon. Let your evenings be calm and carbohydrate-friendly. Get morning light. Delay caffeine. Know whether you need silence or background sound based on how alert you actually are, not on habit. The brain is extraordinary. It is genuinely responsive to how you treat it, when you challenge it, and when you let it recover. That's not a metaphor, that's physiology. Here's what I want you to do right now. Drop a comment below and tell me one thing about your current daily routine that you think might be working against your brain, and one thing you're going to try from today's episode. I read every comment, and I'll actually respond. Let's figure this out together, because the best personal performance lab is your own life. Growth is not accidental. It's intentional. If you're ready to build a better version of yourself, welcome. Stay tuned.